This is the seventh and final video in our series on how to implement a more conversation-based selling approach. In this video, we will provide very small and practical changes you can make during your conversations that will not only improve the impression you make, but these will help you to get more out of those conversations and most likely increase the number of leads you're able to generate. And before we talk about those changes that you can make, let's first look at how a product selling salesperson might handle the conversations and meetings and appointments they have with sales prospects. And that is that in most cases, they focus primarily on selling the product during their conversations and meetings. After opening the meeting and warming up with the prospect by asking some casual, non-business related questions maybe, the product selling salesperson will jump pretty quickly to talking about themselves and the product they sell and the company they work for, and maybe progressing to closing the prospect on seeing if they want to buy the product they sell or if they're interested in moving forward. And if you hear that, you might think, well, that sounds like a logical approach for a salesperson to schedule a meeting with a prospect and then present the product or service that they sell. But the problem with this approach is that this is an all about me approach. And that flags the salesperson as being a salesperson who's trying to sell something. And that can sometimes feel uncomfortable for the prospect, and it definitely does not help to build rapport. And another thing that's not great about this approach is that the salesperson really does not even need to sell the product at this point in the sales process, because we're just having a first conversation, and this is just the first step to start to get to know each other. That's why we actually break this part of the sales process into two steps, with having a conversation where we can learn more about the prospect. And then there's a second step, which we refer to as the explanation, which is where we can then explain how we can help in more detail and then have a more thorough attempt to sell the product that we have to offer. And if you implement this approach, that can modify the conversation that you have with sales prospects. You can still open the meeting with some chit chat and warm up with the prospect. And then instead of it moving forward to talk about you, you can make the conversation more about the prospect. And it's very simple. All you have to do is simply ask your current state and pain questions. And not only does that make the conversation all about the prospect, but it helps you to learn more and extract extremely valuable information. You could then transition to talking about you by talking about how you could potentially help them. And then you could wrap up the conversation by trying to close the prospect on moving forward to talking more about what you have to offer and how you can help the prospect. And making these changes can completely transform the conversations you have with prospects, because instead of being all about you, you make your conversations more about the prospect. And that will take you from sounding like a salesperson who's trying to sell something and make you sound more like a consultant or an advisor. And this will help you to have conversations that build more rapport. And by spending time learning about the prospect and asking good questions and gathering valuable information, you will improve your ability to find opportunities and see areas where your product or service can help. And this will help you to generate more leads from the conversations that you have with prospects. And if you want to implement this approach, I can actually show you what to say in each of these sections of your conversations. A good question to ask at the very beginning of a meeting is somewhat of a geography question, either asking the prospect where they physically are at that particular time, if it's a virtual meeting or online or over the phone, or if it's in person, you could ask the other person where they're from. And based on the answer there, you can usually get a little chit chat going by asking about the weather or about any sports teams in that particular area, any current events. This is a great way to just warm up the conversation, get a little non-business related chit chat going on with the other person, warm them them up, get to know them a little bit. Then you could start to progress to more business, but still not getting to talking about the particular area where you have something to sell by asking the prospect about what their role is and what they're working on, maybe how long they've been working for that company or in that role, what they did before, what they like most about what they do. And a question I often like to ask in the beginning of a meeting is, I know why I wanted to meet with you. Is there any reason why you were motivated to meet with me? You might share the agenda for the meeting and what you're planning on talking about and doing. You could confirm if that matches up with their expectation. Is there anything in particular that the prospect is hoping to get out of the discussion? Confirm if there's a hard stop for the meeting. From there, a nice way to start to get to the particular area where you have something to sell, but still keeping it about the prospect, is to transition to asking your current state questions. These are questions that help you to learn about the prospect in the particular area where you have something to sell. You might find an opportunity for how you can help just by asking these questions. But if you don't, or if there's still room for you to continue asking questions, you could then transition to asking pain questions, which should be designed to dig a little deeper to find out if the prospect is having any challenges in the particular area where you have something to sell. If the questions you ask don't lead to you identifying either an area where there's room for improvement or exact pain points or challenges that the prospect is currently experiencing, you could then share with them a list of pain points that you help to solve and check in to see if those are particular areas that the prospect can either relate to or is having challenges with. So at this point, most of the conversation has been about the prospect. You've learned a lot about them. Hopefully, you've found areas where you might be able to help them. And this is where you can begin to introduce what you sell and the company you work for. Really nice way to take that to the next level is to share an example of a customer that you helped with your product or service. And you can do that by introducing a customer you worked with, maybe sharing a problem they had before they came to you, how you helped to solve that problem with your product or service, and then maybe the potential outcomes that led to in terms of the different areas that you helped to improve. And at that point, you've kind of wrapped up what you were hoping to do in the conversation. You've made it about the prospect, learned about them, and then you've introduced yourself and what you sell at a very high level. One last thing you might want to do before you go for the close is you might want to qualify the prospect a little bit to gather more details to flush out whether or not the prospect would be able to purchase the product or service you sell. And you can do that by asking some qualifying questions. Here are some need to purchase questions. Here are some ability to purchase questions. You could ask authority to purchase questions, and you could ask intent to purchase questions. And then the last step of the conversation might be to close the prospect on moving to the next step. And so you might want to close the prospect by trial closing, by saying, well, what do you think about what we've discussed so far? How does this fit with what you're needing or with what you were hoping to see? Is this something you would like more information on or to spend more time discussing? The next step would be for us to show you a presentation, demonstration, list of options. Is that something you'd like to put on the calendar? So hopefully that gives you ideas of how you can improve your conversations with sales prospects. And that rounds out this series of how to implement a more conversation-based selling approach. There are still steps and work left to do after the conversation, but our focus for the conversation-based selling approach is primarily on making those small changes that help you to immediately increase the number of prospects that you're able to get to agree to have conversations with you, and then showing you how to optimize those conversations so that you increase more leads. And what you do with those leads falls beyond the conversation-based selling approach and sales methodology. And if you want more help with what to do after the conversation, or if you want to dig deeper into any of the concepts and tips and tactics that we discussed in the sales methodology, you will find all of that in our full sales methodology called the Smart Sales System. And there is a YouTube playlist that will take you through all of the training modules that sales methodology is built around. background. And that is pretty much it. I hope this video series was helpful to you and gives you some new ideas for how to improve your sales results. If you have questions or want more information, the best place to go is salesscripter.com. Thanks for being here, and we look forward to seeing you on the next video. Have a great day. Take care. Bye.